At this time of year around the world, gifts are on the brain. Whether they're for loved ones, friends, ourselves, many of us are figuring out what items to get and how fast they can arrive at our doorsteps. And if we're really cutting it close to gift-giving time, we're braving crowded stores full of fellow procrastinators or hoping that items are available for same-day delivery.
But it hasn't always been this easy for things on our wish lists to be available for us. In fact, it wasn't until the 1960s when something happened that would change the world of consumerism forever: the container revolution, also known as containerization.
Now, you're probably thinking, what is this container revolution? How is it I've never heard of it before with an awesome name like that? I, for one, am picturing something out of Beauty and the Beast, where all the dishes and containers are defending the castle against the villagers, and they're coming out with...
Not exactly it. Actually, that's completely wrong. Luckily, SIS professor Daniel Bernhofen, an expert on international economics, is going to tell us all about it.
Before the containerization, shipping was very labor intensive, that each item has to be shipped individually, and the industry was very, very segmented. That means the shipping industry operated different from the trucking industry, and the trucking industry different from the rail industry, and it was very, very cumbersome. And containerization, what is another word for containerization, intermodal transport, changed the whole scenario. Containerization is more than putting the loading and unloading a container. Containerization is the whole process of loading a container and using different modes of transport to bring the container to the final destination without dealing with all the intermediate handlings that took place before the container era. Containerization reduced the transportation costs of shipping one good from one country to the other dramatically. And so it allowed actually the fragmentation of production, meaning that intermediate parts of a product like an automobile can be produced and manufactured wherever it's cheapest, and then being shipped wherever it can be manufactured, and then to the customers. So it allowed really for a deeper integration of the world economy, for a larger division of labor. And so it reduced costs.
Back in the 1950s, ports around the world did business like they had over the previous few centuries, slowly and expensively. Picture men, and it was pretty much always men, individually loading and unloading each sack of flour or bolts of cloth or crate of fruit.
Containerization was a game changer, so much so that between 1966 and 1983, the share of countries with container ports rose from about 1% to nearly 90%. And this coincided with a takeoff in global trade.
According to a study co-authored by Daniel Bernhofen, in 22 industrialized countries, containerization explains a 320% rise in bilateral trade, or trade between two nations, over the first 5 years since those countries started using containers, and 790% increase over 20 years. It's hard to imagine what the world would be like if the container revolution never happened.
How can you construct a world without the container revolution? So it's a bit tricky. Since containerization started in the 1950s, 1960s, we can only make some conjectures. Certainly the fragmentation of production wouldn't have proceeded as fast. China wouldn't have certainly not grown as much and developed so much into a manufacturing workshop of the world, since China, among more than many other countries, really invested tremendously in container technology and was able really to produce most parts of a big part of items that we use in everyday life and also in the shopping season, etc.
And what of 2021's holiday shopping season? Container ship technology has been pivotal to what we now know as our global supply chain. COVID-19 has certainly affected that, and not in a good way. If you've seen empty shelves in the aisles or haven't been able to get that new car or graphics card or couch or whatever, you're not alone.
Yes, containerization also was developing and was proceeding in a world of open borders. COVID really changed that. We had border issues, and we know that for reasons in terms of shipments. Then China, like I mentioned before, China is a big supplier of goods that were also shipped to and from China on containers. And since China actually had strict COVID restrictions, it led to some bottlenecks. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect is also because of COVID-related shipments of COVID supplies in terms of oxygen masks, etc., oxygen apparatuses and masks. So the containers have been reallocated towards destinations where not so many commercial goods are shipped. And now we are at a point when the world economy has been actually recovering again. So there's a mismatch in the use or the availability of containers in these container shipping routes.
Now, looking to the future with driverless cars and drone technology, things that we've been promised since the Jetsons, finally becoming possible, could it be that we are set for another container revolution? Is there something new on the horizon that could be just as game-changing as containerization? In Professor Bernhofen's view, not so much.
Given that the container revolutions were such a dramatic change that didn't only shift the shipping sector, it really affected the rail, the trucking, the ports. I think it was such a huge change. It's unlikely that drones are going to have been as disruptive. Technology will always be disruptive, but the question is into what magnitude. But since containerization led to huge dislocations, for example, the port of Liverpool and London, they've been serving the British empires for centuries. Within a decade, the ports had to close down. So the two ports were replaced by container ports outside of Liverpool and London, and lead to dramatic changes. In the United States, the ports of New York and San Francisco, also serving the US trade also for a very long time periods, were also replaced by the port of Newark, the port of Oakland. So we saw some dramatic changes out there.
Bottom line, the container revolution is aptly named. It was, well, revolutionary. The world would look a lot different if containerization never happened. And it might be that another such revolution won't happen anytime soon.
In the midst of the holiday season, when, for many of us, gifts are just a click or a store right away, let us not forget one of the biggest reasons those gifts are available in the first place: containerization.
You know, if you don't have a present for me this year, it's really fine. Totally fine.
Emily, I would never let that happen. I could make something. I could do some sort of a craft. I can do gluten-free cookies.